Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Human Services Committee, and we have a quorum. We're missing two of our members tonight, Alderman Grover and Alderman Burse, not with us. But could we have a motion for the approval of the minutes of March 11th? March 3rd.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Are there any additions, corrections? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? On citizens' comments, tonight I am going to have citizens' comments after we have the reports. So if you signed up for an agenda item, if there's no agenda item by your name, I have to assume that you are speaking on a non-agenda item. And I will call those names now, and you can correct me, because these would be the citizen comments, not on anything that's on the agenda, okay? So we're clear. This Vicky? Yep. Petsenko? Vicky Petsenko. Alicia Kaplan. Elisa. Jenny Grit. Well, it doesn't say that. Okay, you're Care?
Yeah,
All right.
Jenny is care too.
And Jenny is Care as well? Okay. And Jeffrey Mallow, Care? Emma Smith, I'm assuming it's Care? I know her. And Benjamin Schuler? Yeah, no, it says Animal Shelter. Never mind, I see it. Kathy Roberts? And Asher Biederman? Biederman. Care. Okay. So we have no non-agenda items. Everybody else has signed up for an agenda item. All right. Let's items for discussion tonight. We first have the township monthly bills. Is there a motion for approval?
I'd like to move for approval.
Second.
Okay. Are there any questions on the bills? If not, it's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Items for consideration. The first item is HH1, review of the February and March police complaints. Are there any?
I'd like to move that we accept the report, Madam Chair.
All right.
Second.
It's been moved and second to accept the report. No, I see no lights, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Then the next item is the the Evanston Animal Care and Control Operations. And I'm going to ask the city manager if he'll come first and
We not go through everything.
make,
Madam Chair,
I'm sorry?
it may be late to make this recommendations, but it would be all right if we go through the other items?
No, I'm
since
just
they're all-
going to, I'm proceeding just as it is.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good evening. You have before you on page 92 of your packet a communication from me following up from your meeting last week. And if I may, I'd like to read through the recommendations. That the council receive this report, approve the City of Evanston animal control policy, approve the volunteer animal organization partnership policy, direct the city manager to create an Evanston Animal Shelter Fund to receive donations for the animal shelter, introduce ordinance number 54014, creating the Evanston Board of Animal Care and Control, to receive and file a report from the Corporation Council on legal options regarding donations received to support the Evanston Animal Shelter, and to provide direction to the city manager regarding city reimbursement of costs regarding volunteer rescue activities. So I think this is consistent with the direction from your last meeting. There have been some changes made to the animal control policy. We've added an additional section regarding cats. We've also added some additional language regarding the use of donations, which is in Section 7 of the policy. Regarding the Animal Shelter Fund, we would move forward with the creation of that with the council's minute order. You have Ordinance 54014, the Board of Animal Care and Control, and again, I think the committee talked through that at some length at your last meeting. And then the Volunteer Animal Organization Policy, that is again consistent with your direction from the last meeting. The committee also asked staff to follow up on a few additional issues. There's a memorandum from the Corporation Council on care financial issues. And then also finally the committee asked that staff consider reimbursement to interested volunteers who have spent their own funds to support operations at the animal shelter not supported by CARE. And this is something really outside of a staff's jurisdiction, but if the council would provide direction, if you'd like us to do some additional work on this, find a funding source, identify a dollar amount, find a funding source, we'd be happy to do that. So, Madam Chair, with that, I think then the second piece of this is the position of CARE moving forward. At your last meeting, they did not choose to elaborate more than on an email that was sent. But since then, they have provided a memorandum, which is on page 94 of your packet, which goes through their position as where they are on things. Unfortunately, given my read of the letter, I'm still not quite sure where things are at with CARE. So there are two other recommendations. If CARE wishes to negotiate a new one-year agreement, I'm asking that I be directed to negotiate such an agreement and to come back to the council on April 28th with the agreement for review and approval. If CARE declines to negotiate a new agreement, it's recommended that the council authorize me to issue notice to CARE ceasing the relationship with the city at the Evanston Animal Shelter and to work with CARE to vacate the animal shelter no later than 5 p.m. on Friday, May 9th. Then to direct me to issue a request for qualifications to volunteer animal organizations to express interest in working at the Evanston Animal Shelter no later than Friday, April 25th. And then to direct me to return to the council with an update at the next council meeting on April 28th. So I think the policies and procedures based on the committee's last discussion I think are pretty straightforward. I think then the question is, what is our next step as the city moving forward? And with the communication from CARE, again, I'm not quite sure what their desire is. So my hope is that perhaps the council can read more into that than I was able to. Certainly their representatives hear from CARE who may wish to elaborate on their communication, but I would hope that the council committee this evening would either direct that we move forward with a new one-year agreement or direct that we move forward in another direction. I think that committee has been very good about talking about these issues, studying these issues. There's been a subcommittee that has talked about these issues. I think pretty much the information is known, and now would respectfully ask that the committee provide some additional direction. So happy to answer any questions.
I think we're going to, at the request of an alderman, we had you go first because now that you'd like to hear from the citizens who've signed up this evening.
Very good.
And then we'll have questions and discussion with you afterwards.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, is that the way you want to go, Alderman? Okay, all right, fine. We have 21 people signed up. I am going to extend it, not 15 minutes. I'll give you a little bit more time. We'll at least give everybody at least a minute this week to do this because we've done this as you all know, over and over and over again. I think we've heard it. We've gotten lots and lots of emails over the weekend. I know that some of the council members have replied. Some of us haven't. I haven't, but it doesn't mean that I didn't read them. I read every one of them, so I understand where you all are coming from. And again, I want to say again, I think we said this at the last meeting, how much we, as council members, appreciate all of the volunteer time and all of the work that CARE has put in over the years. So I don't want that to get lost. I really don't want that to get lost. With that said, we have a full agenda tonight, as you can see, but we'll try to give everybody a minute. If you want to yield your time to someone else, that's fine. But we're going to stick to this so that we can get this taken care of tonight. Okay? So the first person on our list is Pauline Yearwood. I'm going to call up 4 people at a time. We have then Trish Parma, Judy Vogt, and then Vicky Pacinko. Those will be the first 4 people.
Hello. My name is Pauline Yearwood. I live just over the border in Rogers Park. I don't know how I got to be first. Somebody stuck a pencil in my hand and I signed my name there. But what I want to say is very simple, and I'll make it quick. I've been a 17-year care volunteer. I have never, I know most volunteers. I certainly know everyone on the board. I've never known such a dedicated group of people who, all of whom are volunteers. Nobody gets paid. Everybody else has a full-time job or goes to school or is involved in some other activity. All of the volunteers do what they do solely because of their passion for animals. And I don't know how an organization like this, a small grassroots organization composed of a couple hundred very passionate people, suddenly got to be the enemy. I don't understand. I think it's a terrible injustice, and I would like to just say that I think that CARE doesn't deserve the reputation that it's gotten.
Thank you, and thank you for your service, and we don't consider them the enemy, so I just want to make that clear as well. Okay, can we have the next speaker?
Thank you. My name is Trish Palmer. I'm a Wednesday night dog volunteer, an advanced training volunteer, CARE's dog volunteer coordinator, and most recently a foster mom to Chaco, who is my new pit bull with anxiety issues. I tried to stay out of this because I like dogs and people not so much. But after Alderman Braithwaite's visit to Karen, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to look at both sides, you left us with a question that's really been bothering me. And the question was, why haven't we stood up and defended ourselves against the things that were not true that were being said? So that bothered me enough to try and explain to you guys who we are, okay, as the people that take care of these dogs. When it was too cold for your children in Evanston to go to school, we were at the shelter. Because if we don't go to the shelter, they don't eat. They don't get fed. They don't get loved. When they were outside in this cold, and only out there for a minute because that's all they could tolerate, when they went three-pawed, we took off our gloves and used our warm hands to get their paws warm enough to finish their walks. In the summertime, when it's too hot and all of us are in the air conditioning, we feed them ice chips. We set up a kiddie pool. And we bring in our box fans from home to cross-breeze them to keep them comfortable. So given all of that, the lie that was really stuck in my craw was, if I am willing to risk frostbite on my hands to keep these paws warm, why in the world would you think and believe that I would take a dog bed away from a dog and make him uncomfortable on purpose?
I'm sorry, your time is up, and I hear you, and I don't think, please just don't think that people speak for everyone, all right? I'll just say that. Thank you.
My name is Judy Voigt. I'm a Friday night cat volunteer. And at work today, I was just trying to think of things that I could say, just isolated incidences of things that you probably aren't aware that we deal with. For instance, we've had animals left at the door where they'll be left with one cat alive, one cat dead in a bag. The volunteers on my shift, at times the washing machine breaks down. People have taken towels home with them to wash them and return them to the morning shift so the people on the weekend have clean towels for the animals. And most of us have full-time jobs, so we're doing this on our own free time, working hard under stressful conditions in a building that's really not suitable to be a sheltered facility. I don't really like to do this, but I feel compelled to mention this incident because it has just stuck out in my mind. Last summer on a Friday night, I came in for the shift, and the chief warden had taken all of our cat climbers and lined them outside to be thrown out, which led a lot of us volunteers to retrieve them, and we put them in ISO. ISO is a isolated area where we have cats that are, either haven't been vet checked, and we also use it for storage. And so we were trying to find a place where we could put the climbers where this wouldn't happen again. This is CARE property, 100% owned CARE property. And it's just incredible. And also in the last couple of years, we've noticed that a lot of cat supplies have been missing, which includes cat combs, cat brushes, food, cat beds. Like I said, I just had some things I wanted to say. So
Okay, thank you. All right, Vicki.
We're going to try to limit the number of speakers, so we will keep it short for you. My name is Vicki Pasenko.
Okay.
And I live at 503 West Oakdale in Chicago. I think what you're hearing here tonight is sort of a picture of the dysfunction that's at the shelter right now, and I know you guys have heard it before. Most of us have been in some kind of toxic relationship in our life, and it's difficult for the two sides to say, hey, this just isn't working and we need to walk away. I think that's where we are in this situation. The city and the care leadership have had a volatile relationship for years. This isn't about the volunteers that go walk the dogs. We're in that category too, most of us. As volunteers, we've been told for years that the city keeps care from being the organization it wants to be. They've been saving money so that they could go outside of Evanston and build their own shelter. They have rebranded themselves toward that goal. They have tried to blame us, the dissident volunteers, for ruining their relationship with the city, but all we've really done is shown that you can work with the city if you have a spirit of cooperation and that it's possible to have that with the city. So please take the actions necessary to end this tonight and let the shelter move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
We tried to condense our comments here, so mainly I just want to
Just
thank...
identify yourself
Oh,
since
I'm
I'm
sorry.
not calling you because
I'm sorry.
you have no way of knowing
Elisa
who's who.
Kaplan. I'm sorry.
Okay, Alicia, okay.
On behalf of all of the volunteers here, I just wanted to thank the committee and the city staff for all the time and hard work they've put into this issue. We know you have things to worry about other than the animal shelter, and we've been so impressed with the responsiveness and concern of everyone in the city. It has truly made us proud to live in Evanston. This has been a long and painful process for everyone involved, and we're glad that tonight we're finally reaching a resolution. So on behalf of ourselves and the animals, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, is this Karen next? Karen Strauss, and then Jenny Grist, and Jeffrey, and Erica Bond.
I'm Karen Strauss. I live on Hinman Avenue. I'm a 20-year Evanston resident and a 14-year care volunteer. As I wrote to you in an email over the weekend, I would like the committee at this time to vote to recommend to the city to obtain a second legal opinion. I read the memo written by the Corporation Counsel, and he failed to consider that what this was a partnership. And like the breakup of any partnership, there has to be a means for dividing up the assets. There's no question that this was a partnership. CARE, in documents authored by its board, referred to this as a partnership. I've already sent you a letter and sent you the documents that I think substantiate that CARE was the fundraising arm of the animal shelter. So in this partnership, the city provided the shelter and provided some costs. CARE provided other costs and also the volunteer hours. But what CARE was for the shelter was the fundraising arm of the shelter. So, for example, if people came in with checks, they would be told to cross out Evanston Animal Shelter and write in CARE if they wanted to support the humane activities going on at the shelter. So someone has to wade through this partnership breakup and divvy up fairly the assets, because as the fundraising arm of the shelter, they were the fundraising arm. People were contributing to what they believed was the shelter. And in fact, on the Strut for Strays 2014, which is taking place in May, it says CARE, a unique shelter. That's what it says on the fundraising page. CARE, Friends of the Animal, Evanston Animal Shelter. I mean, they're raising money for the Evanston Animal Shelter still. Okay, and they're calling themselves a unique shelter.
Your time is up, but I just want to say to you that we did get the email, and I know that the city manager received it as well, and that will be referred to our legal department. Great, thank you. After Karen is Jenny. Oh, okay, and Jeffrey Mallow, okay.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Mallow. I live at 2315 Hartzell Street in Alderman Tendon's ward. My wife, who was here, Ann Mallow, volunteered at the shelter for 8 years working with cats until health issues prevented her from being on site. During that time, she founded the medical program for cats and was its director. She also initiated the trap neuter release program for feral cats. I assisted her on various occasions with the dogs and the cats and an occasional goose. We were charter members of the fostering program for cats. Under no circumstances do we believe, nor have we ever said, that the care volunteers are not committed, caring, and competent. That is also true of the dissenters with whom we have allied ourselves and who have also been volunteers. None of them has questioned either the commitment or integrity of the other volunteers. We are sure that the board members themselves are committed to the animals as volunteers. It is their behavior as board members that we find so problematic. Ann and I are among the donors to the fund that now appears to exceed $1 million. We were told that we were contributing to an entity called Care for the Evanston Animal Shelter. We were told that the monies were to go for upgrading and expanding the shelter. But when asked for an accounting of the expenditures at an earlier meeting, the CARE president announced they had been advised by their attorney not to divulge that information. Where's our money? We and all of our friends who contributed designated their funds to Care for the Evanston Animal Shelter, not care for whatever shelter it decides. Why has the CARE Board rebuffed offers to volunteer? Erin Crucial and Joyce Borsatti, who with Ann were there at the beginning of CARE, have been told they are no longer welcome. Our neighbor's college-age daughter, who asked to volunteer with the dogs, was rebuffed. CARE has ignored my wife's countless offers, orally and in writing, to foster cats. I hope that this is the last meeting of this committee on this topic. If I may paraphrase Alderman Fisk at the last meeting, let's stop kicking this down the road. Let this be the end of the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Erica Brown.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this very brief. I really just want to say at the end of the day, the most important thing is the care of the animals, Evanston's homeless and unwanted animals. It doesn't matter what agency really manages those needs and facilitates the adoptions, as long as they're doing a good and fair job. It's time for the city to make a decision on which agency will best fulfill those needs. We'll be able to work with the city, the police department, and the animal control officers within the city's new standards of care and operation, and that this agency will share will care for Evanston's homeless and unwanted animals. The agency should be able to successfully manage that all the lives are treated with respect and compassion, and they are all afforded the same opportunity to have a successful life. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Marlowe? Okay. Steve Schreiber?
It's been said, my point has been taken by better people.
Thank you. Well, we won't say better people. Okay. Karen Williams, I guess it is. It looks like K-A. All right. Okay.
Yep.
Well, yeah, you're next.
My name is Karen Williams. I live at 2101 Oakton Street in Evanston. I'm in Alderman Burrows' ward. The first clause I want to address is the first paragraph regarding kennel enrichment for the cats, which kind of conflicts with what was added later, and I'll just briefly mention that, if I can get it on my phone here. And it just says...
Are you talking about in the policy?
Yeah, cat and kitten enrichment. While kennelled and in isolation or quarantine, cats and kittens have limited handling contact, although they have some interaction with people as staff and patrons walk through the area, usually responding to the animals by talking to them. I think they really need to kind of remove that, because it's kind of a cold-hearted way to discuss our cats, and I think what they have afterwards is better. I was concerned with saying limited handling contact of cats and kittens. The other statement in the agreement I want to mention is that cats that are determined to be feral will be transferred to an approved rescue when possible. But what you need to know is there is no feral cat rescues. There are places like Treehouse who are very familiar with feral cats, but they're going to tell you how to do it and they're going to give you the trap, but then you work with the public or whoever it is in how to do that. Okay, they're not going to take the cat in. Also, if it's an unsocialized cat that's been living in someone's house, we've had some great success socializing those cats and kittens. So that's a possibility to do right at our shelter. You don't have to send them out. I also wanted to address a couple of things that are said about if care no longer...
End your time, too. I'm sorry.
I guess what I'm saying is there's a tight timetable as far as us, having to leave and another place coming in. And also it's been very made clear that we keep our money, so whoever comes in has to have the money ready to go and the volunteers. So whether the agreement addresses the good transition there as far as, leaving by May 9th, but you're still looking at proposals April 28th. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Ann Berkeley, and then Emma Smith, you were with the other group. Did you yield your time?
Yeah, I would actually like to see my time to Celia.
All right. And then I think this is John. Can you read that? What is that? Church?
Did you notice the
Okay.
agenda item?
I'm sorry?
I signed up for? I signed
Yeah,
up for
she's-
the last agenda
Yeah,
item.
she's noise control.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're right. I'm sorry. John, and then, hold on, Virginia Mann, then Judy Rosenthal, and Gail Lovinger. Those will be the next speakers.
I'm John Crushell. I'm an Evanston resident. I've been following this on the patch. I wasn't at the last meeting. I'd like to state that, we've got a lot of great troops here. It seems like the problems with management, obviously a lack of governance or oversight. They're not a non-cooperative board, I guess you might say. And I would hope that everyone gets this thing resolved today and sets it to rest with the proper accounting so that people who gave funds, those donor-directed funds, are properly used. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Virginia?
Thank you. Virginia Mann, 3004 Normandy Place. I'm not a volunteer at the shelter. I'm just a taxpayer and a donor. And I am extremely concerned as a taxpayer that for years the city has paid for various funds to be used at the shelter, whether it's for food, for medical care, other things at the shelter, while this organization sits on $1.3 million. Every time I come to one of these meetings, I hear about volunteers using their own resources. Last week we heard about volunteers who spent more than $10,000 out of their own pocket for medical care. Tonight we heard from the people supporting CARE's position talk about how they bring in box fans from their home, how they bring in other things from their home to provide for these animals. This is wrong, and whatever happens going forward, I hope that the city will make certain that something is done to reimburse the volunteers and to reimburse the city, and to make sure that going forward, if CARE is part of this, that they spend the funds that have been donated to them for the benefit of the Evanston Animal Shelter. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Rosenthal.
Hi, my name is Judy Rosenthal. I've been a cat volunteer at CARE for almost 9 years. I'm also a cat volunteer trainer. In addition to my shift, I also participate in tabling events and do fundraising activities for CARE. I also want to address the terrible malignment that has been aimed at CARE. During last week's speaker's comments, there were a bunch of times when I wanted to scream out, "You're lying. It's absolutely not true." So tonight, quietly, I'll respond to two of the comments. The first speaker of the evening accused CARE of putting our animals in danger. Because the meeting's video has been deleted, I can't quote her exactly. But one of her points was, not only does CARE euthanize dogs, we also neglect our animals' medical care. this is so far from the truth. If she actually knew anything about our organization's practices, she would know that each animal's health is a priority to us. Volunteers are taught to watch for telltale signs of illness and to inform the medical director, who always follows up immediately. Like overprotective parents, we observe our cats with the utmost diligence, and their health issues are addressed always immediately. In the second instance, I again listened with restraint to a care volunteer who said that as long as care stayed at the shelter, the animals would be in danger. Her concern, she said, was that if current volunteers leave the shelter, there won't be enough support for the animals, since CARE as an organization has decided at the current time not to continue taking on new volunteers. Perhaps what she's worried about is in fact possible. If CARE leaves...
I'm sorry, your time is
just
up.
like 2 seconds.
Okay,
If CARE leaves, many volunteers will do so as well. And if CARE leaves, I too worry about our animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail is next.
This is Rosa Gallery. I think, and was Carrie? Is that Carrie? Carrie. Kristen Gallus.
Okay.
I'm Gail Lovinger. I live in the 7th Ward on Simpson Street. I'm a 25-plus year resident of the city of Evanston. I've been a dog adoption counselor at CARE for more than 21 years. I'm also a current member of the CARE board, and I'm speaking on behalf of the board at this meeting. So, Chairman Holmes, I'm asking for a little longer period so that I can present the information that this committee has been asking for from CARE.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to thank Alderman Braithwaite for coming by the shelter on Saturday to learn a little bit about how we operate. I would like to address 3 major issues. First, I would like to talk about some clarifications that we need to know in these processes. Second, I'd like to present some concerns we have about the draft policies themselves. And finally, I want to address some unintended consequences of these policies. The clarifications are 2. First, we've been asked whether CARE is willing to enter into negotiations with the city to continue to stay at the shelter. For us, the term negotiation implies a give and take, a discussion, and some compromise. Our understanding of this process was that there was going to be a policy presented and CARE was going to be told to take it or leave it. If there are things that are open for negotiation, we would like to have more information about what we can actually negotiate and in what context we can sit down and reasonably negotiate. The second issue that I would like some clarification about is this committee specified that whatever was drawn up for CARE would also be used with other organizations if indeed CARE decided not to stay, or in Alderman Grover's words, to walk away. Now, essentially what has come up is that there are now 2 policies. One is called the policy for the partnership arrangement. The other is the animal control policies. But in fact, the animal control policies speak more to the relationship with the volunteer organization than the partnership policy. So we'd like to have some clarification that if indeed CARE decides not to continue its relationship with the city, is it still the committee's intent that any voluntary organization also be asked to meet those same requirements that are in the 2 policies? In terms of the draft document per se, the first issue that I'd like to talk about is the lack of a true partnership. As we read it, essentially for the privileges of a 1-year agreement to provide care and adoption services for the animals at the shelter, the VOA would be responsible for all capital costs. Now, that includes software for the shelter that the chief animal warden would pick out, that would be the property of the city of Evanston, and which most volunteers would have limited access to. It also includes building alterations that the ASPCA recommends based on the current facility and concerns about behavior evaluation. In addition, it concerns paying the training costs for the animal wardens at the shelter to learn how to do behavior evaluations and to get certified, as well as the ongoing costs for the ASPCA to come and regularly evaluate how those evaluations are being done. And in addition, the voluntary organization would pay all medical costs, I would assume routine for the animals, but extraordinary medical costs, which, for example, CARE has always paid for. Unaddressed in this are all the shelter supplies that CARE has already always paid for, and uncertainty as to whose responsibility that is. This doesn't feel like a partnership when the voluntary organization has absolutely no input on decision-making and are being prevented from participating in issues directly related to adoptions and training for the animals. The arrangement that's being proposed is one-sided. The VOA has no authority or voice, but is expected to pay for the decisions made by others and to finance the general operations. Which brings me to the second point. The Shelter Operations Fund. What is it paying for? There is nothing in it that specifies what this fund is going to be used for, particularly given because the vast majority of the costs are being put on the VOA. My third concern that I want to raise is that it creates two classes of volunteers. There is the rescue team, which gets special privileges, special responsibilities, and even a special place to work in the shelter, and all the other volunteers. Two issues. The voluntary organization is an independent organization, and it doesn't seem to me like the city should be dictating how that organization should be structured. It seems to be a disconnect there. But the second issue is, if you know anything about organizations and volunteers, the quickest way for an organization to disintegrate and for morale to go down is to treat people differently, which is exactly what this proposes to do. The final issue in terms of what's in the policy that I want to raise with you today deals with the expansion of adoption hours during the weekday from noon to 6 p.m. The ASPCA report recommended that adoption hours be expanded in the evening, not in the daytime. So we're not sure where this is coming from. Our volunteers work full-time, and as a matter of fact, most of the people who come in to adopt also work full-time. So I'm curious, and we would want to know, what is the evidence-based reasoning for saying that the shelter needs to be open during those hours, and how they think that a volunteer organization where people have full-time jobs are going to be able to accommodate that. So those are some of the major issues regarding the policy itself. But I also want to talk about the unintended consequences of this policy.
And can you begin to wrap it up, Gail?
I am wrapping it up. This is the last stuff. I've got two more points to make.
Okay.
All right? First of all, the goal of having every dog out within 30 days and holding the VOA responsible for making sure that animals get out of the shelter in 30 days means that essentially you no longer have a shelter where people come and adopt dogs. That becomes an animal control facility. But if you look at the dog intake, if you look at the dog return to owner, and you look at how long it takes to adopt some of the dogs out, there will not be dogs at the shelter to adopt out. When people come, they'll be lucky if there are one or two dogs, or possibly none. So essentially, the shelter as a place to get dogs isn't going to really be there anymore. Now, the shelter is a place to get cats. We don't know what's going on. There doesn't seem to be the same 30-day limit on cats. And we don't know what the plan is for adoption of cats and what the requirements are for that. In addition, as we're getting these dogs out within 30 days, there is the issue we've raised time and time again of vetting the rescues to make sure they have the capacity and the ability to take care of these animals. The second unintended consequence is a missed opportunity, because the city of Evanston had a great opportunity. This discussion should have been about What kind of animals and dogs does the city of Evanston want to have in its community and to be responsible for? This should have been a discussion of what kind of dogs do you want living on your street? What behavior is appropriate and acceptable in a community like Evanston? In most of these discussions, we were not even allowed to bring up the fact that indeed sometimes dogs attack other dogs. Sometimes they even kill other dogs. Sometimes people bite people, dogs bite people, and people bite dogs. So sometimes dogs bite people. Sometimes they maim people. In extraordinary circumstances, they kill people. This isn't theoretical. Every week, if you read the newspapers, you will see reports of this happening. And these aren't roaming packs of animals. These are dogs that people have been working with. They have in their homes. They are trying their best to manage these dogs 24/7 to keep these dogs safe and to keep their community safe. But all it takes is one slip up, and that dog gets out of the yard, dog pulls off the leash, and somebody gets hurt. We had a chance to discuss what kind of standards the city of Evanston has and what is appropriate. This process has provided no guidance. When the next group of people go in to evaluate dogs, there are no guidelines for what makes a dog somebody who should go out and should not. Again, it's up in the air. And eventually it's going to come down again to one person saying, well, I think it should go out. One person saying that it shouldn't go out. But there is no substantive guidance to tell people what it is that this city of Evanston expects for its community and what the city of Evanston's responsibilities are for the safety of our community and our residents and other animals in the community. We are waiting to see what our understanding is that the final policies will go to the city council tomorrow.
Well, if we make a recommendation tonight, it'll go to the city
council. When that happens, CARE will sit down. We will review what has been approved. We will review it within the context of our mission and goals and be able to respond to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Rose Gallery. To who? Okay, then Carrie Euler? Okay, Kristen Callis?
I'll give my time to Cheryl as well.
Okay, well then Cheryl, you're on with 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes.
Well, then I guess the deed is on. Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl Ferraro. And the first thing that I would like to say is I missed you on Saturday. I was in on Saturday night, Alderman Braithwaite, and we heard that you gave us a nice 2-hour visit, which was really appreciated. One of the things, and you brought your dog, right? One of the things that came up and was touched on briefly earlier was the topic of myths and things that have been said that aren't true. And when Alderman Braithwaite was visiting, he asked the question, and please correct me if this isn't accurate.
Can you put the mic closer to
I'm
you?
sorry.
They're having a hard time hearing you.
Sure. Okay. The question that he asked the volunteers, and correct me if it's not accurate, is it true that dogs don't receive any food for 2 or 3 days before the evaluation? Is that true? Okay, so that was the question, and of course, everyone said, of course that's not true. And another thing, that really, was a topic of discussion then afterwards, after you left, was the fact that you had encouraged people to come and stand up and speak and dispel these myths, which is, of course, appreciated. And one thing I want to say about that is there's a lot of people that aren't going to stand up and do this. There's a lot of people that just won't write a letter. It's not their style. I think somebody said earlier, one of our volunteers said earlier, I'd rather be with dogs than talk to people. And a lot of people that are affiliated with the shelter, that's kind of the mode. So along the lines of dispelling myths, which I've brought up before regarding dogs that are called
failed, which we don't refer to dogs as being failed dogs. We put a little notice on the cage that does say that they've failed a test, because that does give us some information as to how to proceed with safety. I really appreciate that. I'm one of these scaredy people with some of the dogs. There's plenty of dogs that I just personally, don't walk. I wish them well. I give them treats and tell them to get adopted. Anyways, so the myth is that failed dogs don't receive enrichment. That's not true. Failed dogs do receive beds. They do receive treats. They get everything but car rides, trips to PetSmart. They don't go off the property. They get walks around the facility, and certain trainers, especially the more advanced trainers, will take them out in the run. That's not me. So, okay, so there's that. The other thing that I want to talk about is I would really like to bring our conversation back to the heart of our original issue, which was the fact that, I'm going to put it this way, at this point in time, it's as if we have two groups within CARE. We have the CARE group, the board-supported CARE group. Their philosophy, they err on the side of caution. They have strict criteria for adoption. Their goal is to place safe companion animals, and they've had much success with that. And the criticism has been that the assessments are way too strict. And then we have another group within, and they, within the CARE organization, and I respect them. They have a different end of the spectrum. They want to see all dogs placed in a home. They want all dogs rescued. They don't want to see dogs being euthanized. I've only been with CARE for the past year, and I will say, had I been here in earlier times, I'm sure I would have been talking with people that hold that other point of view. And I personally believe that there's a gray area. And I think that CARE has, the CARE board and supporters of CARE as it is, I think that, at this point in time, people are saying that yes, maybe we need to pull back a little bit, but all at the same time, their concern is that we have safe dogs in our community. But I do believe the thought at this point in time is that, yes, it's possible that there are animals that we might not want to adopt today, but with some work, send them to rescue. We'll work with that. Okay, so all of that. And then the other part is... Sorry, you need to wrap up. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up really, really quick then. Okay, I've struggled to figure out why this has been so difficult. I was very heartened when this went to a subcommittee group. I also thought this was going to be a place of discussion, and it really wasn't ever a place of discussion. That being said, I wish us all luck. And the only other thing that I want to say is, I know I said I was going to be finished, and I don't mean to single people out, but Warden Techler, I reviewed your comments from the meeting, and your comments were like somewhere between 21 and 20 seconds long. And for all the people that have stood up here and fought to have a minute or two to talk, being the fact that it's your shelter, I would like to see you, be, more involved and spending more time taking care of your shelter.
Thank you. Steve Young, Benjamin Schuler, Kathy Roberts, and Asher Biderman. Those are the last speakers.
Hi, I'm Stephen Young. I'm an adopter. I adopted a dog out of the shelter about 1.5 years ago. This was a dog that was originally marked for euthanasia, but because of the concern and the persistence of one of the volunteers, she was saved, and we ended up adopting her. I've been to several of these hearings. It's been a real education. When the director of the facility was asked why the euthanasia rate was so high, 10 times higher than Waukegan, for example, it was explained that they never want to put the community at risk or put a dog out there which may harm a person. But the reason the dog that I have now, who was worked out beautifully, was originally marked for euthanasia is because she chewed furniture with a previous adopter. They brought her back. We ended up adopting her, and she did chew furniture, indeed, when we first got her, but all puppies do. I've had dogs my whole life, and it's just something you have to get through. And you don't mark a dog for euthanasia because they chew furniture, and yet it was explained that so many dogs are being euthanized is because of the fear of aggression. And chewing furniture is not aggression, not, in my terms of seeing what normal dog behavior is. We wouldn't be having this discussion at all if there was no controversy here. Obviously, a lot of people are very upset at the way the shelter did business, at the way they made decisions on which dogs would live and which would die. And this discussion would not even be happening here if there wasn't so much evidence from the people who have come forward to raise this issue before the city council in the first place. So I'd like to see this wrapped up. I mean, you've got plenty of evidence to work with here. The most damning to me was when the director of the Waukegan shelter stood up here, a facility that handles more dogs than the Evanston facility, and their euthanasia rate was 1/10 of what Evanston's is. That's obscene. I tried to adopt another dog. My family interviewed it before we got the present one, and that dog was euthanized before we could even go through the adoption process, even though we wanted to adopt it. But now we have this dog that was originally marked for euthanasia because she chewed, and she has worked out beautifully. My family loves her. And you wonder how many other dogs have gone down because of poor judgment.
Thank you. Benjamin?
Benjamin Schuler, 132 Elmwood. CARE is a nonprofit organization that does receive tax-deductible donations. As a citizen, my contributions to the city are through the taxes that I pay. Now, aside from that, CARE does hard work, CARE does good work, caring for dogs, cats, and all comers. CARE has 200 citizens volunteering their time, energy, and efforts on shifts on a weekly basis for the welfare of the homeless animals. The board of CARE is also comprised of volunteers, not employees. The board is comprised of volunteers who spend more time and more work than the rest of us. It is a board that I support. It is a board that has been democratically elected by its membership. And as far as CARE goes and considerations with the animal shelter and animal care and control, policy decisions are made routinely in government and discussed in public. But much of the discourse and criticism on this topic has gone beyond discussions of policy and charted into unwarranted territory verging on the personal agenda.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kathy Roberts?
Hi, I'm Kathy Roberts. I've been a volunteer for about 5 years. First, I need to address the slam that was made on Linda Teckler. Okay, she's been the warden for many years. When I first came there, I was told to stay away from this woman. She's a bad person, and they tell that to all the volunteers. There are many people who are scared of her, who don't even know her, who have never had a conversation, and that needs to change. How are we going to have a partnership when this woman is demonized from day one? As far as them trying to blame everything on her and saying the euthanasias were at her approval, generally when they did the behavior evaluations on Saturday night, you listen to the voicemail on Sunday morning, and they would say this dog has failed and will be euthanized. They did not have a chance to check with Linda Teckler, so they're demonizing this woman. I was thinking this morning about partnerships and what makes good partnerships, okay, and different elements. And let's talk about CARE and let's talk about what we have here. Okay, my elements, you have to have respect to have a partnership, okay? You have to have cooperation. There's no cooperation with CARE, very little, between CARE and the city. Appreciation. Okay, partners, if you have a partnership, you need to appreciate and cooperate with people. The CARE apparently does not appreciate the fact that they're getting a rent-free facility, they're getting heat, they're getting air conditioning, they're getting food, they're getting cat litter, they're getting whatever, and they say that the city is contributing little or nothing. That's not right. Evanston deserves better than that. You've done a lot to the shelter, and I don't really appreciate what they're saying about that. And as far as communication, you need communication, another element of a partnership. These are people who would not even address you before. Okay, these are people last week when you said specifically, can you please address this? They sat in silence. And this is what you can expect from them from now on, okay? And I'm just telling you, that's my feelings about that, okay? I think that the city of Evanston deserves an organization that will cooperate with them. The city deserves it, the people deserve it, the animals deserve it, and the city officials deserve not to be treated this way. There should be no partner of Evanston that is allowed to treat you like they're treating you, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bitterman? Biederman.
Good evening. Asher Biederman, 9050 Kildare in Skokie. I just wanted to correct a couple things that I heard tonight. We adopted our first dog in 1996 from CARE, and in 1996 I wrote my first check as a donation to CARE. The check was made payable to CARE, not to Evanston, not to Evanston Animal Shelter. And for every year since 1996, I've written multiple checks to CARE, not to Evanston. It's a no-brainer. It's a charity. It's not a municipality. There's a difference. Second point, since 1998, I've been with my wife a volunteer for Strut for Strays, which is a good event that's held every year. I've never witnessed, and I've been to every single one, anybody instructing somebody to scratch out the name Evanston or Evanston Animal Shelter and writing CARE. That's ridiculous. The current brochure for the new Strut for Strays for this year does not mention Friends of the Animal Shelter. It doesn't mention Evanston. It mentions CARE. CARE is situated in Evanston, that's true, but we get people from all over the North Shore. I wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that completes the speakers on this item. I don't see any lights. If not, are there any questions for the city manager before we? Okay, Alderman Fisk.
And Madam Chair, may I just make one comment before we start?
Absolutely.
The operations of the Evanston Animal Shelter is my responsibility as the city manager. Ms. Teckler, as the animal warden, has done exceptional service. Some of you may not know, she is the senior city employee. No one has worked for the city of Evanston longer than Linda Teckler. So while I understand that there's concern about the operations of the shelter in the past, I take responsibility for that. Ms. Teckler is an employee of the city of Evanston, and any comments regarding the operation of the shelter should be directed to myself and not to Ms. Teckler. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing I guess I want to do is move to approve the City of Evanston Animal Control Policy and approve the Volunteer Animal Organization Partnership Policy. And tell me, Mr. City Manager, if I'm doing this properly, okay? Direct the City Manager to create an Evanston Animal Shelter Fund to receive donations for the animal shelter. Introduce ordinance number 54014, creating the Evanston Board of Animal Care and Control. And continue to discuss with the Corporation Council on legal options regarding donations received to support the Evanston Animal Shelter. So that's the basis of my motion, and then I want to address that, if I can speak to that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Madam Chair, you look confused.
I do. I am, because
okay.
I'm reading what you were saying just to make sure that I'm understanding all of that to go into one
motion.
One motion.
And I think, Alderman Fisk, the only thing you changed from what is in writing is number 6 regarding the Corporation Council's report.
Right.
Otherwise, it was as written.
Right. And the reason I did that was because of a comment, I believe, made by Ms. Strauss, which was a possible discussion of whether or not there has been a partnership that would affect the disposition of funds that were created or were solicited by the city and CARE.
And since she sent that information, and I know the city manager received a copy of it as well, because sent the email and to our legal department, I think I don't think that it's right to incorporate that into the motion.
Okay.
So I cannot vote on it in that way. I can vote on it if we're going to go with the 7 points.
All right, then let's do the 7 points, and we'll leave that
as written.
You leave that as written, and then I will remove the number 6, with Corporation Council, as long as we are moving to continue that discussion.
To move it on to council. Alderman Tindon? I saw your light.
Sorry.
Oh, can I continue to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, after Alderman Tindem. It doesn't matter.
My comment was that we actually request a separate motion for engaging, the city engaging CARE in discussions about the money issues as it stands now. That would come after this discussion.
Okay.
So now we're speaking to my motion?
We're
then?
speaking to your
Okay.
motion, which is as is written.
Right, with the exception of number 6.
No, we're going to leave number 6 as it is.
Oh, right. No, fine. I'm happy with that. Okay. Now, I'd like to speak to that. It's been moved and
Okay, go ahead.
seconded, is that correct?
It's been moved and seconded.
Okay. This has been a long process, and it's been pretty much discussions with CARE have been going on for probably 15 months now. We've had difficulty in getting any sort of decision on the part of CARE, and it's been like pulling teeth. And there has never been at any time during those 15 months when we were talking about very emotional issues, there has never been any time that we haven't prefaced those comments with the fact that we appreciate every single volunteer hour that's been spent at the shelter. I've spent my life in animal rescue. I know how hard that is. I have feral cats, and I have a feral cat that is one of my working team with me that came from the feral cat colony in Northwest Evanston. So I know this. I know how hard it is. But I also know that through the discussions, not only the discussions that we had with CARE behind closed doors with the mayor, Alderman Rainey, city manager, police chief, and others, that CARE seems to have a vision for its organization that is very different from what we must do as a municipal shelter. I don't disrespect at all CARE's vision for itself. I understand when it says that it wants to only accept the kind of dog or animal into its program that it thinks it deems appropriate, but that's not what's appropriate for the Evanston Animal Shelter. I appreciate very much the strength and determination that it took for volunteers to stand up and say, question authority. You may see those bumper stickers that say question authority. I absolutely believe in that. And they asked why so many dogs were being euthanized. Now, my friend Alderman Braithwaite went over to the animal shelter on Saturday with his dog and had a very good conversation. I have a dog that came from the shelter that was slated for euthanasia. That dog in my home with my other dogs and cats and birds is the most well-behaved, absolutely wonderful animal in the world. And he wouldn't have been here if the volunteers, and especially Warden Techler and Alderman Rainey, hadn't stepped up and questioned the authority of the folks of the CARE leadership who actually conduct the tests. So I agree with the ASPCA. There's a problem with the shelter. There's a problem that we have to address. And this is the way that we have to address it, is with the CARE leadership. So all of you volunteers, please understand that it's not you that's being singled out or criticized in any way. It's questions that we have with the board and whether or not we can go forward with the board under these circumstances. I think it's, as I said in the last meeting, I think it's time to end this. I think it's time for us to have a vision for the shelter and move forward in a way that really respects both the city, the volunteers, and the animals. And I believe that we can do that. I think that we're at the end of the discussion, and it's appropriate tonight for us to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for the volunteers that came out. This weekend was actually, very eye-opening for me, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I didn't understand the evaluation process. So that's really was my primary reason for going over was really to understand the evaluation process, which I hoped would help me to understand exactly why a room full of volunteers who all love animals can't get along. And unfortunately, I did get a very clear understanding of the evaluation process. I got an even better understanding of all the wonderful volunteers that work at the shelter. Sadly to say, we couldn't get past the point that it's taken probably about 2 years for us to get here. So my vote this evening is probably going to be one of the most difficult ones this evening that I've ever had to vote on, because this conversation, you all, isn't about right or wrong. It isn't about the theories. It isn't about the vision. Unfortunately, it's going to be about two family of volunteers that just could not get along. And so it's very disturbing. And so with that being said, I don't know if it's time to call the question just to...
Well, I have more lights.
A couple lights? Okay.
And I just want to comment, just so that nobody gets confused.
Yeah.
We're making a recommendation to the city council, so we're not closing out. We're closing out, hopefully, we're closing our conversation tonight in Human Services. That's all we are doing. We're making a recommendation to move it on to the council, so none of us can predict what's going to happen there. And I just want everybody real clear. And there will be more discussion, I'm sure, at the council level as other people get more involved. And so some of the conversation happening now probably would be best saved until after we've heard conversation and discussion at the council. Alderman Tindem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I came into this relatively recently, into this discussion, when the special committee was formed. It seemed like I, being a pretty sound animal supporter, would have a clear mind and be not influenced by discussions in the past. Actually, quite a few meetings, closed doors meetings, that I was not a part of. What I did have about a month to get caught up on all the different issues, and CARE was very good to give me a lot of background information. I actually have a binder full of information now that was started by the city, but certainly CARE contributed a lot of the documents as well. And I was, in the beginning, I was talking to volunteers on all sides of the issue. Some were, and I would say the vast majority of volunteers were just questioning what was going on. They weren't in favor of the CARE organization or against it. It was simply they were CARE. All the volunteers I spoke with were CARE. But they were simply wanted to find a quick resolution to this and not let this thing drag out, as it has, to become a discussion in the media, the blogs, and everything else that contributes to making a situation much, much worse than it ever had to be. I did finally have a time during our hearings, it became pretty obvious to me that this was a contaminated relationship. More and more people came forward. In fact, in my ward, many people, about 16 or 18 people, came forward who had been former volunteers at CARE. And those stories I took to heart, because I realized these people wanted to be a part of our animal shelter, animal rescue, and our animal care in this community, and felt that they could not participate in it. With that, you know the rest. I've been involved since that time, and I think that certainly my vote hasn't changed. I think that, as I did a month or so ago, the relationship is broken beyond repair, and I think we should advance forward. I realize we're not exactly doing that tonight, but I still stick by my original thought after the subcommittee hearings. So that's what I have to say. And again, like I said, I didn't even distinguish between volunteers. Everyone was a volunteer to me in the beginning, and they were all passionate about animals, as I am as well. And I relate to that. I understand that, and I understand how emotions could get very raw, and things could get very heated, because we do all care about our animals, and a lot of people think we're crazy because we put animals on a high pedestal and we are here meeting with them night after night, meeting about them night after night. And I think I don't feel like I've neglected the rest of society because I have a passion for animals. It's just one of my big passions. So I'd like to thank all the volunteers, present, past, future, and I know we can come out of this with a terrific shelter because we have the human energy, human resources to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Tinderman. I think I'm going to say this is the last thing I'll say before I call for the vote. I think that, and I'm really happy that the city manager said that, this lies within his office, and we have a city manager council form of government in Evanston, and he's hired to take care of these things for us. I've learned if the good Lord keeps blessing me in a few more days, my 76th year. So I've learned that there is one side of this story, and then there's the other side, and in between somewhere there's a truth. Okay? So I think we all know that. And I think that we'd all be remiss, at least I would be remiss if I didn't say that, and I can't remember which speaker because I didn't write their name, but no matter who and how this turns out and whatever happens with the future of the shelter, because the animals don't speak for themselves, human beings do that, and of course as human beings we all have faults, all right? But one of the things that we really do have to do is to have the respect, the cooperation, the appreciation, and the communication that will allow any kind of partnership, no matter who's it's with, to work. And I think that our city manager is very much aware that the city, everybody has fault in this. And I'm going to say I think the city has fault in this, and maybe we didn't pay as much attention as we should have. But we've learned, and we want to move forward. And I hope all of the volunteers, the Board of Care, all the animal lovers out there will understand that and want to work with us to make sure that we have the best shelter on the North Shore, that we have the best shelter anywhere. I think Evanston can have the best of anything no matter what it is. So I really feel that way about it. So I'm hoping that we will all leave here tonight feeling that, and certainly we will try to convey that tomorrow night to our colleagues on the City Council. So with that, you've heard the motion. It's been it was seconded. So all in favor of moving on to the City Council with the recommendation, 1 through 7, I'll just put it like that because it's all written. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And with that, we move on to the council. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you all for
Oh, wait, we had one. Did Alderman Tindall want to make?
Well, and if I
Oh,
may,
wait, we have
Madam
one more.
Chair, so then there's the issue of care. So there are 2 additional recommendations if CARE wishes to negotiate a new one-year agreement, and then if CARE declines.
And I'm sorry, I should have said that. I was waiting for that, and I forgot. Let it slip away from me. But if I heard correctly, what Mrs. Loving just said is that they wanted to hear first what the council had to say before they wanted to decide whether they wanted to negotiate. So I'm assuming that meant that they wanted to see how the council would vote tomorrow night before they decide whether they want to vote or not. Now, does that mean that we then have to make a recommendation on this or tonight, or it would have to come back, or could that be moved on to the council as is?
And then that's why I stopped you, because
okay.
I think that if this committee could provide some advice to the City Council tomorrow evening, again, I think we heard more from the CARE Board this evening regarding these issues than we've had over the last several weeks. So that indicated to me that there was some additional interest, which here before this evening we didn't necessarily have. So I think
I'm not sure, because in the memo that we received, did it not say that they wanted to sit down with the council? I thought it wasn't with us that they wanted to negotiate, but with the council. If I remember reading in the, I have to look at it, but I'm not sure.
It was certainly unclear to me, but I think after Ms. Levenger's comments this evening, it's much clearer that they've actually raised substantive issues.
Okay.
So if it's the committee's wish, then I would encourage you also then to take a vote on the other item, which is the 1 year agreement, so that you can provide counsel to the rest of the City Council as to what your wishes are. Because I think otherwise the council may be a little stalled, and I would hope that tomorrow evening the council will give clear direction, and if it's this committee's wish to let this be now at the council level as well, then the first part of that second paragraph then says to come back to the full city council on April 28th. That would be very helpful to me to have that kind of direction. Conversely, if what you heard this evening is not what you wanted to hear, then it would also be helpful to know that, so that we could move on and look for other partners. So one way or another, I think the council would benefit from the committee's recommendations on this next point.
Okay, I have 2 lights. I have Alderman Tinderman and Alderman Fitz. Right, or, yeah, Alderman Tennant.
Actually, I was going to, that's when I was going to make my second, the motion for regarding the money, but I think this discussion has to come first.
Mhm.
So I will speak at some point, thanks.
Okay, Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's it was interesting to hear Ms. Levenger tonight, and a little bit frustrating because we have had this agreement out for 2 weeks now and have not had a response from them until this evening. I didn't hear anything that said, and we've just voted on the policies and the revised draft agreement, but I haven't heard anything that said that, and actually have heard that they did not feel very comfortable about the position that they felt that they would be put in regarding whether or not they would be the decision makers with the rescue team, with the animal warden, what their position was, and they framed it in the terms of creating a second-class tier for the care volunteers as opposed to the rescue team. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about tiers of volunteers. We're talking about trying to make something work. I didn't hear from them whether or not they understand that they would not be doing animal evaluations any longer under this agreement. That would be over. And that would be put in the hands of the animal warden and the persons that she designates. I heard that there were a number of things that Ms. Levenger said that they did not feel comfortable with. And I am not, absent some positive indication here that they are on board with this agreement, I think it's time for us to say that this is over. We've continued this discussion for so long. Everyone else has gotten up here and commented on the draft agreement and the cats and the dogs and a lot of the things that I agree with and are reflected in the revised draft agreement. But I'm not willing to go back and start over from where we were a year ago, which produced no results in negotiating with CARE. This has been an extraordinarily painful, drawn-out, emotional experience for everyone in the community. And to suggest that we might be, again, going behind closed doors to have further conversations with CARE, I'm not willing to do that, as I said at the last meeting. If some of you decide, or if the City Council decides that you're going to give them until the 28th, it has to be open meetings. It has to be, and that's what this committee is for. That's why we asked Ms. Gelb last time to stand up and make a comment. Tell us, she's been in that position for 23 years. Tell us what she thinks about this draft agreement, and she wouldn't do that. This has really gone on long enough. It's really time for us to change gears here and say this is not working and go ahead with a strategy and an organization that really is going to fulfill our mission for the shelter. So I would strongly suggest this committee have the courage to say no. And the last thing I want to mention is that someone said that there were board elections. I would like someone to tell me when the last time that the president of CARE was up for election and what the vote was on the board. When is the last time that your president appeared on a ballot where all the volunteers at CARE voted for president? Can you tell me that? Can anyone tell me that? Ms. Levenger, can you tell me that? And was there anyone running against Ms. Gelb?
Just for the television, the response was it was 2010.
Okay. But her name appeared on a ballot that was voted on.
It was from the nominating committee. This was the recommendation. It was approved by the volunteers.
Okay.
And she just said it was from the nominating committee, it was approved by the volunteers.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this question is to us just a point of information. I'm looking at page 92. I'm looking at the second paragraph. It says if CARE wishes to negotiate the new one-year agreement with the city pursuant to the animal control policy, it continues to say that the city manager to negotiate such agreement and return to the city council on April 28th. Now, when I sat with a group of volunteers yesterday on the other side, I said the same thing. So I totally get where everyone is in terms of wanting to see an end to this, and I think we're all on that same page. But I said to the volunteers, and I'm going to say the same thing that I'm reading right now, what I read, and this is where I'm asking our city manager for a response to this question, is we gave until April 28th.
No.
Well, to return to the council, but I guess my question is where in the recommendation I don't see a deadline for the organization. I made an assumption that it was the 28th based on what I've read, so I'm asking for a response to that because that's what I communicated, so I could be wrong.
Oh, I don't know, and the city manager is certainly free to answer, and that's what I'm responding to because I think I heard Ms. Lovinger clearly tonight say that they wanted to wait until it went to city council.
Right.
And that's why I wanted to, because obviously they didn't want to do it here, and to see how the council was going to react. And I hear what you're saying, city manager, it would make your life much easier if we did that here. But I was trying to respond to that in terms of how, we can certainly make a recommendation to the council. We're making a recommendation to the council that we want to accept this policy. I mean, that's real clear. Now, and so how can we recommend that there be negotiation or not with CARE when, based upon her statement tonight? That was what was confusing to me.
And again, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I guess that's where I'm at too, is that I'm still confused. They've raised issues. Those issues seem to be incompatible with the discussions that this committee has had. If they're waiting for the city council to change the policy, which you're recommending, to make them more compatible, I guess that's an option. I'll be honest, I don't see that this full city council is going to do that. My concern is then tomorrow evening, if all these policies have been approved and the full city council agrees with that, what is the next step? Is the next step then to go back to CARE and say, this is what it is, what do you think? Is it to say, we know that you're not happy with this, and so the city is just going a different direction? Is it to do nothing and just wait and see if there's additional response from CARE? I just don't want to leave tomorrow's meeting if the council wishes to move forward without a plan, and I think the council would appreciate this committee providing a recommendation as to what that plan looks like. So it's either, I think, despite the fact that CARE has not come with a full-throated, yes, we want to keep talking, to either say, yes, okay, Mr. City Manager, go back, talk to them, keep it on a short string, come back to the full council on April 28th and tell us what you found out, or it's, we're done with CARE and we need to move forward and do something different. So I think those are the two options. I was hoping it would be, the lines would be clearer, and unfortunately they're really not.
No, they're not.
But I think that if you're able to provide any additional direction to the full council, otherwise they're going to look like you all look right now tomorrow evening, I fear, and we won't be able to move forward. And I think they would appreciate your counsel.
Right. Well, we have comments from Alderman Tindem, Fisk, and then Brathwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the only thing that's going to be acceptable, and someone from CARE can certainly, from the CARE board, Ms. Lovinger, could correct me, but the anticipation would be that this council would direct this agreement back to staff to incorporate a number of the issues raised tonight by the CARE board. And I don't think that's in the plans as far as I know, and I would not certainly not recommend that. I think it's this is the 11th hour, and it's time to really just finish this business. And the fact that now is when they've chosen to raise those other issues, when in fact this draft proposal was an invitation to everyone in the community to take part in creating this document. That's a loss that they've incurred. It was open to everyone. They understood that, as far as I know, and I'm sorry, but you've lost that opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree with that. But, Mr. City Manager, the question that I have is that the way these things work is that we have a discussion at committee, and that's what we're here for. We're here to listen to all of you, and we're here to discuss, and we've done that. We've done that for a long time. The plan was to move this to City Council tomorrow night. That's our next City Council meeting. It is a little late in the day for CARE to be the CARE board, and I'm trying to make it clear that we're not involving the volunteers in this, but for the CARE board to be stepping up and trying to keep this going. I think the discussion is appropriate for us to have at City Council tomorrow night. I think that's where we've been moving. I think that's what we've been expecting. I don't see that it is appropriate for us to be asking, and I'm not even quite sure what we would be doing until April 28th. But this is time. This is the decision time. This is what we're here for. This is why we were elected, to make a decision on this, and it's going to council tomorrow night, as far as I know, and that's what the plan is. So tomorrow night at council, either what we are recommending to council will be approved or not approved. And after that, I don't believe there's any more discussion going back. We're not going to go back and revisit that. That's going to be voted on. That's going to be done. And we don't take votes on anything and then say, oh, okay, well, now we're going to open up another discussion to see if you actually liked our vote or whether you want to make changes to what we just voted on. That's not the way that all of this works. This is why we were trying to get Ms. Gelb to come up to the podium last time. We weren't trying to pick on her or be mean to her. It's just this is the way that the system works, is that you are all here, we're all trying to work on this together, and tomorrow night the council's going to make a decision.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And since we're all just thinking out loud, I agree. I think that we do need to move forward. I agree that we have gone through the process of creating a policy. I also agree that on Tuesday we will be voting on that policy. And I'm just going to go back to what I read. I also agreed and I communicated that then there would be a period between now and the 28th for them to respond. I don't know if they're going to change. I think it's very clear what the city's expectations are. When we spoke on Saturday, and I'll just repeat something that you said, if there's a drastic turnaround, then we have something to talk about. But if not, then we move forward. Okay, then scratch that. But here's what I also agree that this policy is. It's a very clear direction for CARE to say yes or no to. There's no confusion about that. And then it also sets up a very clear expectation for another organization to come in if it so chooses. So, and this stuff isn't going to happen overnight. So I just want to be careful with how we proceed. Again, let's recommend it to council, let's vote on the policy, and then let's give that period of the 28th.
No, I don't think that we can do that because that's not what we've said. I
we
can't
don't
help
even know
what
what the policy is going to be voted or passed.
I hear you, but
Yeah,
I'm
so
saying
it's
for
hard
our
to-
committee, for this committee, that we have to now address the second portion of it. And I think that what we have to say is that since we did not have a clear, as you just stated, yes or no, because the policy has been out there for everybody to look at.
Right.
Since we've had no clear yes or no from CARE in terms of if they want to negotiate a one-year lease, that we'd have to recommend to the council that we cannot make a recommendation that they do that. Now, if the council chooses to wait until they can wait till June, as far as I'm concerned. But I don't think that we can say that we want them to negotiate a contract when it's clearly not stated. They have not said that. And I wanted to listen real clear. I even took some notes to make sure that I was hearing her correctly in terms of where they want to go. So, I mean, that's the only thing that I could vote on for tonight, is that if we have to address it, we can't kick the can down the road. We have to put on our big big girl shoes and big boy shoes. I almost said something else, sorry.
Thank you.
But-
Thank you. Thank you.
And do what has to be done, okay? So, I mean, that is what we need to, and I don't know if I can, and I'll try to state it clearer if I can, or if somebody else has some better words. But I think since we have not had clear direction from CARE in terms of a yes or no, that they wanted to negotiate a one-year agreement with the city based upon the new proposed
Right.
animal control policy, that we cannot recommend that the city then enter into negotiations, that the city manager enter into negotiations with CARE. We can't do it because we don't have it. We don't have anything to. How would we do that? I'm asking if it's clear enough. I don't know if it's clear enough. Mr. Ford, is it clear enough legally? It's not clear enough. Okay. So we can have it. If somebody can help me clarify it, then
And Madam Chair, members of the committee, I think that, again, that was the design of what's on the third paragraph of page 92, that if that's not the case, that I be authorized to issue notice to CARE ceasing the relationship. I'll work with CARE to vacate the shelter on a fixed date, 5 p.m., May the 9th. Direct the city manager to issue a request for qualifications. Those would be next steps.
I hear you, except that they haven't accepted nor have they declined, and that's the piece that's unclear for me. We don't have a yes or a no from them.
Right.
And you can't be lukewarm. We have to be hot or cold. I understand that. And since they've been neither, how can we make a recommendation to the council that they accept or decline?
And Madam Chair, members of the committee. No,
I'm sorry.
please.
Alderman Fisk. And then
I thought you actually clarified it really well, better than I could ever have done. But maybe this will help. I am going to move that the city council, that we direct the city manager not to negotiate an agreement with CARE. I could add more words, but I'm trying to pick out what you said, Madam Chair.
I guess a point of information before we vote, how does this have an impact on the question that's on, or the item that's on tomorrow's agenda? We'll have to make an adjustment.
And I think you will have the ability to do that. The council,
Right.
we've put quite a bit on, and Mr. Ford can correct me if I'm wrong, but.
Right, it's just making, as Wally said, it's just making a recommendation to council to move one way or the other. Council will ultimately vote on that decision. So just for clarity's sake, make a recommendation to council that they can then move on the issue.
Sure. And Madam Chair, if you would rather at this point in the evening stick with the motion that you've had, I think as committee chair you will make comments tomorrow
I was just
evening.
gonna say,
and perhaps your comments sort of summarizing where the committee is at will be sufficient. Your colleagues who are not a member of this committee who will be there tomorrow evening are very well versed, I think, in these issues, and perhaps maybe those comments will suffice, and then the full council has the discussion on what the appropriate next step is.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that because I was going to say if we could add, because I'm just not comfortable with saying because we don't have a yes or no, but I can clarify that in my report when I make the report to the council tomorrow night. So I can go with the third paragraph, which is it. And then we're not recommending. We would recommend that the council not negotiate. That the council not that the council not instruct the city manager to negotiate with CARE for a 1-year extension.
And that was
And
basically
that
my
would be your
motion.
is that your motion?
Yes.
And then okay.
And I think Alderman
And
Tindem
Alderman Tindem seconded.
that.
Okay. All right. And then I will try to. I want to clarify. I have the need to clarify it when we make the report, but we can do that then.
Are we voting on that motion now?
Okay. So yes, it's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. No? I'm just saying, okay, 3-1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff will help as need to be tomorrow evening with the council's discussion on this matter, and we'll go from there.
All right, fine. Alderman Tindem, you wanted something else before the city manager?
Yes, City Manager, is it appropriate that we would make a motion at this point to direct staff to discuss the existing funds?
Certainly this is another issue that once the full city council makes some determination will need to be done. Perhaps a motion would be appropriate to recommend that the council have that discussion tomorrow evening. So based on what the council's decision is, clearly if the council takes the recommendation not to negotiate an agreement, I think then it's very appropriate to discuss what happens to the funds that have been collected. And so perhaps the motion is just to recommend that the council have that discussion.
Yes.
I was just going to say, but based upon the opinion that we received from Director Ferrara, based upon what we knew then. Now, we did get some additional information, and I understand that, so that we would have to be instructed to look at that, and so I could incorporate that in the report as well tomorrow night when we're making that, so that the other city council members could be knowledgeable about that.
Because I think the more that the full council can be done tomorrow evening with all proper direction, allows this committee to move on to other business and allows the community to move on to other issues.
So do you need a motion for that?
I think if the chair wishes to just incorporate that in her report.
Incorporate in the report.
What will matter is what comes out of the council tomorrow evening.
Absolutely. Okay, Alderman Tindem, is that okay? Yes. Okay, Alderman Brathwaite, your light, and, all right, fine. Thank you, City Manager. Okay, all right, moving on, we got a few more items. HH3, the Ordinance 26-0-14, Human Rights Ordinance.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, given the hour, we would ask that the item be held.
Oh, okay.
And we'll come back next month.
HH4? Who has that? Who does? Oh, Jennifer? Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we have with us tonight Ms. Jennifer Lassick to address that issue.
Fantastic. All right.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this item has to do with the 10,000 Ripples project that was begun here under the artist Indira Johnson. I know there's been questions about transitioning into phase 2 of this project. So you have before you the history of the project, that 10 emerging Buddha sculptures were placed around the city. It was intended that they were to be temporary, that they were to be in the city for 4 months, at which time 5 of them were to be gifted to the city and 5 were to be collected by the manufacturer and the artist and the groups that had lent them to the city to begin with. So at this point, the situation is that the manufacturer was to pick them up in November, but with the winter that set in, he got delayed. So he had planned to pick them up about 2 weeks ago, and I requested that he pick up 4 instead of 5 because there's been a request on the part of a group of citizens that one Buddha sculpture be placed in the area of Dempster and Dodge, not necessarily at that intersection, but in Ward 2 in that area. Initially, the request was made that the Twigs Park sculpture be moved. However, that is
that won't be happening.
That is in a ward where the emerging Buddha sculpture is also highly desired. And so until this matter could be resolved, I directed them to leave 2 sculptures in Ward 8 with the hopes that the second one could either be picked up or be moved if the matter comes to resolution. I've spoken with Ms. Indira Johnson, who's the artist, and talked to her a little bit about the project and the donation. And just as a FYI for everybody, she'll be speaking at the Evanston Public Library on the 16th about the matter, so more questions can be asked of her. Those sculptures cost approximately $2,000, and if it pleases the committee, the recommendation is that the citizen group that wishes to have a sculpture in Ward 2 would approach the Public Art Committee as a possible project to be funded, so that instead of having 5 sculptures, we'd have 6 of them. And that's it. Unless you have any questions, that's the recommendation before you.
Any? I think that's Alderman Brathwaite.
No,
Yep.
it's me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman.
I'm sorry.
I keep forgetting.
We're getting, yeah, I'm,
It's the way that you.
yeah, I'm Alderman Nguyen, actually.
Yeah, you're
tonight.
Alderman Nguyen, yes. So I'm sorry, Alderman Fisk.
Mr. City Manager, do you need a motion for us to refer this to whoever we're referring it to? Is it B&D or who is?
Yeah, just.
Oh, all right, okay.
We just
then-
move ahead.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
Let's
move
do
it on
everything
tomorrow
tomorrow
night.
night.
28.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll move that it come to council.
Thank you very much.
Is there a second? Or did we get-
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah. I think, we certainly would like to keep ours, and because, the mosque is right there across the street, so it just makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
And if I could just quickly thank staff so much for the work and effort that you put in to have our ward represented in a way through the arts, and as well thank you to the volunteers that worked on getting us to this point.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we want to make sure we get to a noise. It was moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. HH5, the noise tenant lease.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Joe McCray, Deputy City Manager. Tonight we've brought before you a memo which outlines the staff recommendations for the Noise Cultural Arts Center. It's on page 145 of your packet. Just to summarize, given the time, we're making a couple recommendations that we hope you all will approve. One is to authorize staff to extend the current leases 2013 through April of 2014. So we extend the leases that they have now at 2013 rates through April 30th, 2014. The second is to increase rental rates beginning May 1st of this year through the end of 2014 by 3%. The next would be to have staff and the Noise Tenants Association have staff look at the security system and to conduct a review of it and come back no later than June 1st of this year. And last would be to look at placing a reception desk in the Noise Cultural Arts Center based on recommendations from the tenants, and to staff it part-time with city staff and the other portion of the time with volunteers that we work with the Tenants Association to get.
Okay, all right. We have one speaker, so before we go into discussion, Ann Berkeley, I'm sorry I misread your name before.
Oh, not a problem. Hi, I'm Ann Berkeley. I live at 1204 Crane Street, and I'm co-chair of the Evanston Arts Council. This is Fran Joyce. She's also on the Arts Council. So I'm here to briefly address the recommendations presented to you guys on March 3rd by Maggie Weiss of the Noise Tenants Association and Lisa Deliantoni, my co-chair on the Arts Council. So putting together those joint recommendations was a huge task, but I was pleased that the city manager asked us to do it. Because it gave us the opportunity to begin to address the next steps of the Evans Starts study that we worked so hard on last year. It was truly clear from that study that Evanstonians want a community art center. They want a place where they can hang out and have fun making art and enjoying art, and we have the opportunity to further develop the Noise Cultural Arts Center into such a venue. Once all of the rents are being diligently tendered and collected, the building will become even more financially sustainable than it is now. And I think the recommendations made by the noise tenants and the Arts Council should be easily affordable. We're especially interested in having a receptionist or non-custodial staff person present to assist access to the building and its services. We think that not having such a person in a public building could present a safety issue. So I wanted to make sure you guys understand that over 40 volunteer artists and art supporters came together in these recommendations in what I would estimate to be about 100 hours of meeting and editing time to craft the recommendations, which are now before you. No one organization or artist got everything that they wanted, but I can honestly say that the recommendations that were presented to you on March 3rd really represent the very best efforts, not only of the noise tenants, but also the members of the Arts Council and the art supporters in the community. So we look forward to joining with you and the city to develop this wonderful building.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair and everybody. I just wanted to say thank you so much to the city manager, to Joe McCray, and everybody else who worked on that budget document there. We've been waiting a long time for a budget and feel it's really great to have something in writing from which we can work going forward. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any, yeah, we just make recommendation to accept the recommendation.
Okay. So moved.
So, okay, it's been moved and second that we accept the recommendations made by the city staff and move those on to the council for the next, is that tomorrow night or is that the 28th?
It would
We'll
be
do that
April
on the-
28th.
On the 28th.
I
Okay.
want to be presumptuous.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, thank you. I made an error. I had a second sign-up sheet, and Mrs. Priscilla Giles had signed up to speak on the township, and I missed it, so I'm sorry. I had to send Mr. McCray out to get her, because I just looked down and saw it.
Thank you. Thank you. This is the Human Services meeting, and the main agenda should be Human Services. Evanston prides itself on its diversity and also on going green. The City Council has interpreted going green and diversity for the citizens of Evanston as increasing unemployment and decreasing humanitarianism and diversity. Going green seems to be getting rid of parks and some employees and getting more money for developers. Evanston deserves better. And thank you for coming. Come and get me.
Thank you. HH6 for communication. Okay, that's just for our information, and that's on the tenant-based rental assistance. That concludes our agenda. Is there a motion for adjournment? It's been moved in second. May 3rd, I believe, is the next Human Services Committee meeting. And new committee chair, for real, if she has to be out of town again. Okay.
May 5th.
May 5th. Okay, thank you.